guys, Donnie Boivin. I love Fridays. As we know, every Friday I get to jump in here and do my own show and share just my journey and what I'm going through, and I love these episodes. On this episode, I'm going to walk you through how I was constantly trying to be somebody I was not and why I couldn't find success early in my life. Sit back and enjoy. So, for years growing up in the sales game, I told people what I was going to do and who I was going to be. And you know what that got me? Absolutely nothing. And here's why. I was so caught up in convincing people that I was killing it and I was winning, and it was all talk. I loved the feeling when people said, "You're awesome, you must be on top of the world," but I never really was going for it. I was too busy trying to convince people that I was awesome, and it wasn't working. And I wasn't, getting anywhere with it. It's because I was constantly, wearing these different masks on my journey. And truth, all it really did was make me miserable, stressed out, and had me living in this really harsh paycheck to paycheck lifestyle. Because I had a belief, if they thought I was successful, then by God, they would do business with me. And, here's the truth. I was so successful in words that they wouldn't do business with me. And it was tough, because I was so wrapped up in convincing them that I was going to be, that I was amazing, that it wasn't getting me anything. I wasn't able to create the income or the lifestyle that I needed. And here's what happened, is I really thought that, success was bold, success was big, and success was out there kind of in your face. And it was part ignorance, on my part, trying to convince people how awesome I was. But it was more about my own personal self-doubt. I really wasn't sure I could handle it. I wasn't really sure I could do it. I wasn't really sure if I could, be awesome. And when I couldn't be awesome, it was I was worried how people would see me. And it's a completely crazy thought process, because here I was trying to sell people twice. I was trying to sell them the product and service I had, and then I was trying to sell them on how awesome I was. And the problem is only 50% of those things could I actually sell. Right? I can't sell how awesome I am. It's not possible. I can only prove how awesome I am. Right? I can sell a product and service. That's a thing. But selling somebody to like me is not. And it's inauthentic. And so some of the things that I would do would be, I'd go to a networking event and somebody would say, how's it going? And I'm like, living the dream. That was my phrase. That was the term I used all the time, was living the dream. The crazy thing was, I don't know what dream I was living. Because it wasn't this on top of the world killing it dream that people wanted, or I wanted them to believe, it was really a way to make myself feel good, a way to make my entire world feel better, because I was more concerned with getting the attaboys than I was about getting the deal done. I got more value out of somebody saying, damn, you're good, than I did about somebody, doing business with me. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that the wildest thing? It's the first time I really understood that I was not a natural born killer when it came to sales. And I'm glad of that fact. Don't get me wrong. But, because I was so wrapped up in how the individual felt about me as a person, it really put me in a lot of awkward situations when it came to selling anything. Because first thing that popped in my head when I thought about a salesperson was salespeople are assholes. They're douchebags. They're jerks that are trying to steal your money. And because I was in that mindset of that's what salespeople were, I did everything to prevent people trying to see me that way. And the funny thing is in doing that, I only proved that I was that way. Because here's what happened. I would find myself engaged in a conversation with somebody that I'd love to do business with somebody that would be a great partner to have. And I would try and baffle them with so much bullshit that they would come over the top and fall in love with me. And then the problem was, because I didn't understand what it meant to be a sales guy, I would get the job and then immediately, screw it up. I wouldn't handle the details because I wasn't listening to all the stuff I needed to listen to. I was too hung up on convincing them that I was awesome. And I don't know if this resonates with you, but, when I sold commercial printing, the greatest asset I had as part of that sales process was bringing people through on a tour of my, basically manufacturing plant. So picture this: 165,000 square foot building filled full of, I'm going to guess, 100-foot presses, 8 ink towers on them. I think there was 8 presses altogether, and I know somebody listening is going to correct me on that. And then, in the back half of this entire massive structure was this huge fulfillment center of folders and inserters and, people moving all over the place. And I think in the prime of that company, there was 150, 200 people working there, and that number may be a little inflated, because I know by the time I left, it was ghost town just because of the economy. But, I knew if I could get somebody that facility, that place, that it was impressive. So I would use that to help me about my story and what I've done. And, I had this entire process I would go through. You'd come to my facility, right? You come to where my office, basically, manufacturing plant, and people like walking through these places because most times they don't get to see that kind of stuff, right? You don't usually get to see how a business operates from a manufacturing standpoint because there's a lot of things going on. So it was a really cool thing to take people through. So I would go through this process of, you come in, let me take you on a tour of the facility. And I'm going through that tour, I would point out jobs that were mine that I brought in and projects that I was working on. And I used the word I a lot, like a ridiculous amount. And it was constantly, I did this, I did that. Or I would say things like, this is, my company, my people, my team. And I was taking ownership of everything that was happening in this plant. And even saving this out loud now, I want to punch myself in the face, because I was so hung up on people, seeing me as somebody, that I was taking credit for the people that were actually doing the real work inside the company. And it was interesting because as I, took the work, I got really good at getting the people there to see me as this guy that was bringing through. And, I was bringing through all these people. So it looked like I was doing everything I needed to do. And so we'd go through this I'd take somebody through this digital printing department where this new technology was out, and this variable printing where each piece would come off a different, and it was cool. And then we, from there we'd walk into the massive press room with all the big machines, and then we'd take them back to the fulfillment center. And, you could literally watch a job from start to finish in this place. And it was really, really, really cool. I mean, and the whole process from idea to fulfillment, it was awesome. And so by the time we get to the end of the tour and we go through all the way to the back and come up front, they would be most times enamored and in awe. Right? So this set the stage for the Donnie show. And what I would do is I would now sit down and tell them my story and how I had that successful, sales career in HVAC, and how I had this successful, career in St. Louis, and how I came back home, and how I was hired out from behind a bar, and all of this stuff and the things I created and the stuff that I'd done. And I would so wow them like a ringmaster at the circus that, it was caught in this motion. It was caught in this momentum. And I can tell you, I honestly brought on several deals that way for the company. I did. Several people got caught up in this whole act and art. But the problem I always ran into was because I was so caught up in this act that I wouldn't connect with the individual. They were connecting with the story, with the process, and not me. So I would constantly be creating this world of transactions and not relationships. And, in some circles, if I told this story, the room would erupt, because I took people on this journey and I walked them through and I had this process and I was closing the deal, right? That's that killer mentality. And that's the mode I was going through. That's what I was going towards. And, because of that killer mentality, I struggled to keep the business. I struggled to keep people, coming back for more and building relationships. Now, don't get me wrong. I had a couple of really great accounts that I had phenomenal relationships with, that we did business together for years, because I was able to get past this bravado side of things, and people got to know me and how I function and how I operated. And, a couple of those accounts saved my sales career a couple times when, I lost big accounts because of my bravado, whatever you want to call it. And, those helped me through the smooth waters until I was able to bring in more business. But it took me years to figure out that I was trying to baffle people into seeing me as such an awesome person that I was able to finally, step out from that and understand that, it's more important to make a connection with somebody than to make a transaction with somebody. And here's what I mean. Nobody likes to be sold to. Nobody. But everybody loves to buy. And when you take somebody through a process that in the moment they don't realize it, they don't realize they're being sold to, right? They're caught in an emotional strategy or an emotional game to get the deal done. At some point, they're going to wake up from that trance. At some point, they're going to wake up from that thought process, and they're going to be pissed. Pissed might be a strong word, but they're going to realize that they've made an error. And, my MO was sell it and try and get it, turn it over to my customer service reps as quick as possible, because I knew I'd screw it up. Right? I knew that I would not be able to keep the business because if I kept my hands in it, eventually the whole mask would come down and the real Donnie would come out. And I thought the real Donnie wasn't as impressive as this act Donnie that I was putting on. This is why I hate the whole fake it till you make it movement, or fake it till you become it movement. It's because you're lying to yourself about being something you're not. And that's a really scary and tragic thing, because when you fake it till you make it, eventually the real you is going to come through. The real you is going to show yourself. And if you don't start off with your authentic, goofy, nervous self, then when that real you comes out, there's going to be this huge disconnect. And that's what it was for me. I was so worried that people would see the real me that I had to start stepping back and stepping back and stepping back. It became such a show that at times I forgot who the hell I was. I got hung up on this whole idea of being impressive to people that I didn't really know what or who I was. And here's what I learned. I learned to start shutting up. I learned to start let my actions speak. And I learned to execute. I now know that when somebody comes up and is trying to convince you they're awesome, odds are their life sucks. Odds are they're not going for it. And odds are they're miserable. Because they're so caught up in trying to make you think good thoughts about them and be good and be awesome that they don't know who they are. And see, this whole thought process of me trying to convince people, it was really me trying to shortcut life. It was really me trying to find the easy route to sales. Now, I don't fault myself for trying to find the shortcut. That's how innovation's made. What I do fault myself for was trying to get around the learning experiences. Trying to get out of the lessons and just make it happen.
Hey guys, it's Donnie here, and I just want to let you know that we've recently launched a content development company, and this company helps people get social content. You know you need to put out a lot of content nowadays to get engagement out there in all your social platforms. Well, we've come up with a really cool way to help you get videos, blog posts, memes, social posters, and infographics for whatever social site you need. So check us out at successchamps.us and learn more about how you can get social content for your social media.
Support for this podcast comes from Point Blank Safety Services and Blue Family Fund. Point Blank Safety Services does safety differently. We know everyone is on a journey, and we want to make sure you get where you're going safely. Professional, trained, ready. There's really no comparison. Here's why hiring Point Blank Safety for your next project will make all the difference and save you huge amounts of stress and hassle. Point Blank Safety Services provides certified, uniformed police officers for a full suite of armed guard services. Don't leave the safety of your project to chance. If you're ready to make sure safety truly comes first for your next project, then visit us at pointblanksafety.com.
I was trying to make it easy and not do the work. See, I really realized somewhere along the way that if people believed I was awesome, they would think I was awesome. And in some instances, that was the absolute truth. Some of the instances that was the absolute truth, because when I told you I was awesome, I'd practiced it so many times it became a thing. And, I'm not saying I wasn't good at my job. Let me clear that up. I wasn't saying that I was good. I just wasn't being authentic. I wasn't being real. And I wasn't lying with the stories that I was telling, but I was damn sure inflating, the impact of those stories, or possibly taking credit for something that I wasn't taking, hadn't done. Meaning if we got a job out, faster than we were supposed to, it's because I went in there and said, guys, we got to get the job done. When in truth, it was people were busting their ass and got it out the door for us. But I wasn't going to, let my customers and things know that. And it's such a shame that I did that in the early part of my career, because I think that I probably took credit for a lot of things that I shouldn't have. And I'm sure some people along the way got frustrated with me. I know I had a senior executive who, the first time they told me, they said, Donnie, you've got to quit saying I and me so much. And that was an eye-opening moment for me, because, to be honest, I didn't know I was saying it. And that's the first time I started really looking at myself going, okay, why do I say I and me so much? And it was the light bulb moment for me of realizing that I was trying to convince, as many people as possible that I was so awesome that I didn't give them props where props were due. But once I realized that I was taking their credit, not intentionally. I mean, I wasn't trying to take their business, or what they have done away from them. I really believe I just didn't know better. And so I had to start adapting the way I talked and the way I sold and the way I communicated with people, and, really become a better person. And that wasn't easy. That wasn't easy at all, because I had 20 some odd years of programming at that point. This is what I knew. I mean, I grew up in a household where I was the youngest, and we don't show weakness around two older brothers or they'll give you hell, right? And, make sure that you are bragging about your wins, because otherwise, if you're not winning at anything, then you're sucking. And this isn't, excuse or blaming my childhood on any of this thing. This is just how it was. And it's not right or wrong. It is. And as I continued on my journey, it took a lot of effort and work to turn off that thought process. And it took a lot of reprogramming. But interestingly enough, when I finally stepped through my learning challenges, things started clicking and things started working. And I started learning faster and faster and faster, because now I was embracing what others were doing, and I was learning to sell. I was learning to be me. And it was tough, because being me was vulnerable. Because in my mind, it was, what if they don't like me? What if they don't get me? And what if they don't, embrace this side of me? And here's the cool thing that I learned. Everybody's wearing masks. Everybody's trying to be somebody they're not. And that was mind-blowing for me. Because here I'd spent my life believing you had to convince people how awesome you were. And when I realized everybody's trying to do that, I realized that we lived in such a wild, fake world. And it really blew me away, because if we lived in a fake world where nobody was what they said they were, then what the hell are we here for? Right? What are we doing? What are we creating? Man, it was a wild, rude awakening. I gotta tell you. So I started playing around with it. I started thinking about, okay, what is Donnie? Who am I? What am I doing? And how do I change it? How do I grow? How do I adapt? How do I take off the mask and, become something more? And what does that authentic side of me look like? What do I say? What's too much? What's not enough? At what point do I cross this threshold of, because nobody wants to walk around and tell everybody you're broke, right? Nobody wants to walk up and say, well, I screwed that up and I'm broke as shit. Because that's the misery loves company thing. You know what it's like? You're around somebody who says they're broke all the time. It's annoying, right? It's like, shut the hell up. We're all struggling at that point, right? And I don't want you to do that. But I love it when people say, how's it going? And their response is, I'm learning. I'm learning better ways to be a business owner. I'm learning better ways to be a salesperson. Better ways to be a husband, a wife. I love that. Because a lot of people are leading with they're crushing it and they're awesome and they're amazing and doing all this stuff, and they know it's a lie. And look, man, your subconscious can't tell a lie from truth, really. But you know you're lying to yourself. And that starts eating at you. And that starts tearing you away from reality. And you got to build calluses. What I mean by calluses is when you put yourself out there, there's going to be people that absolutely don't like it. There's going to be people that absolutely are not going to agree with your thought process. They're not going to embrace you. Who gives a fuck? I mean, really, who gives a shit? Your job is not here to please people in this world. Your life is not here to worry about what somebody else thinks. Your life is here to live for you. Get it right with you. Embrace yourself. And enjoy yourself. See, that's why all these masks comes out. That's why people wear all these false fronts. Is because they're more concerned about what somebody else thinks about them than what they think of themselves. It's crazy to me. I mean, I get it. I'm completely empathetic to it because that's how I was. And I still struggle with it from time to time. I still work on it from time to time. And it's tough because as you go for it in life, you have to go for it on yourself first and step into being you. And that's not easy. So you got to get calluses. You've got to get reps in. You've got to get a lot of time working on you because you're going to slip. It's like learning anything new, man. You're going to give it a go. You're going to give it a try. You're not going to like it because it's going to feel uncomfortable, right? You're not going to like it because you're actively trying to grow versus just live. And when you actively try to grow, man, it's awkward. Completely awkward because you don't know how to grow. You don't know how to evolve. You don't know how to get yourself to the next level because you've never done it before. And you've always taken the easy route and avoided the learning. So I want you to start embracing something with me. And this has become a mantra or a cheer, a motivational thought process that I'm using on a regular basis. And it's simply this phrase: the champion chooses the trials. And here's why. If you choose to go through it, you have no choice but to evolve. You have no choice but to get better. You have no choice but to level up. But you got to choose to go through it. You got to choose to go through the learning process. You got to choose to work on you. Right? And then you got to take action and execute. It's one thing to say, I'm going to do it. It's a whole nother to actually do it. Because, man, when you get in it, hold on. Because it's not going to be easy. And it's going to be tough. And it's going to force you to do things that you're not used to. And those things Get ready for it, because you're going to learn a hell of a lot about yourself. And you're going to start understanding how much you held yourself back by not doing those things. And here's a story to kind of illustrate it. A lot of that execution and action is about doing those things you don't want to do when you know you should. Right? And doing the stuff that you know will help you evolve and level up when you stop caring what other people may think. So the other night, I put in, a long day. My days always started about 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:20 at the latest. And I won't get home most nights before 7 o'clock probably. Well, this is one of those nights. And it was a mentally exhausting day. I had a speaking engagement. I was doing some interviews on podcasts. And I had a lot going on in the business. I think I had a couple coaching calls as well. So it was a mentally challenging day, because when you do all that kind of stuff, it can really wear on you. And so I'd gotten home, and I was just in the midst of cooking dinner when my wife got home. And like we do, we always embrace and hug and say hello. And she goes, "I need you to go air up the tire." And I said, "Oh, all right." Now, in my mind, all I wanted to do was to eat dinner, sit down, and put my feet up, because I was flipping tired. But I also knew I couldn't let her drive the car with a low tire. So I bundled up in all the cold weather gear that I have for Texas, because it was in the low 30s. And that's flipping cold. And I know some of you will probably listen to this wherever you live and laughing, thinking that's hot. But that's really cold for Texas. And I go out, I drag out my air compressor, because I'm going to try and just air up the tire. And wouldn't you know it, I plug the air compressor in, and it just dies. It's dead. Nowhere. And I thought, shit. So now I have choices. I can throw a spare tire on. Great choice. But it's cold. Or I can drive to a gas station and find air. So I chose to drive to the gas station, find air, get a can of Fix-A-Flat, and I start airing up the tire. Well, a funny part is I wrote about this in an article not too long ago. What I didn't tell is when I got to the gas station, I was just going to air up the tire. The problem was, this is one of those gas stations you got to put a quarter in to get air. I mean, who charges for air? And I had no quarters in her car. I always keep some in my truck, but I didn't keep any in her car. So I had to go in and buy, a can of Fix-A-Flat. Well, one can didn't work, so I had to buy two. And I aired up the tire, and with Fix-A-Flat, of course, and it's pumping air in a fluid of some sort into the tire to seal up any leaks that may be there. So it airs up the tire to the perfect amount, and I drive home. I get home, I double check the tire, it's holding, so no airs, and, the car is perfect enough to be able to let her get to a tire shop the next day. So I go in the house, and we eat dinner, and I sit down, break open my phone, and start getting to work. And about 30 minutes into the work and working on the business, all of a sudden I got tired. Really, really, really tired. And I started laughing. And I remember my wife looking at me. She's like, "Why the hell are you laughing?" I'm like, "Babe, this is the stuff I talk about all the time. And she goes, what do you mean? And I said, when you looked at me and said the tire was low, I was exhausted. I was whooped. I was, ready to call it a day and put my feet up. But I knew I couldn't leave your car that way. So I went out and got, your car taken care of and got the tire fixed and everything. And then I came back and got to work. Before I started, working on the car, I was out of it. I mean, I was done. I was wore out. I was tired. But now here I am working, on the business and getting things done. And see, guys, I tell that whole story to say it's the execution, not the words. It's doing those things that you need to be doing that are going to allow you to grow and evolve and allow you to level up and allow you to go and do the things that you want to do and go for it. So take off the mask. Take off the front. Take off trying to be somebody you're not and start living. When you execute the habits that will grow your life, the results start speaking and it'll hush your insecurities. It's the execution, not the words. Do the things you know you should do and let your actions do the talking. Man, as you go about your journey, guys, be you. Don't try and be somebody you're not. Be you and learn how to become the person you're trying to get to. Go big, guys. Later.
Thanks for listening to Donnie Success Champions podcast. If you'd like to hear more about our current guest today, or if you'd like to hear stories from our other guests on the show, come hang out with us on our website at successchampspodcast.com. I really appreciate you tuning in. If you need to reach out to me for any reason, you can catch me at Donnie@DonnieBoivin.com.